I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him.
Despite the controversy generated by actress Brie Larson's remarks pertaining to the socio-political movement of feminism in relation to Captain Mar-Vell, the latest film in which she stars as the protagonist, the film itself is surprisingly tame in regard to how it uses the story of the titular heroine to convey the ideology of the movement. There are quite a few scenes and brief moments that pertain to the adversity that Captain Mar-Vell aka Carol Danvers faces as a woman, but they deal with the issue with tact and subtlety, and are therefore inoffensive. Hence, despite the passion with which Ms. Larson has spoken about what she perceives as an overabundance of white male movie critics, and despite her assertion that Captain Mar-Vell is a feminist movie, anyone who is offended by Larson's remarks shouldn't be offended by the movie itself. Ms. Danvers' story is told in a non-chronological fashion, beginning after she has already become a superpowered being, but slowly fleshing out her origin via flashbacks that are triggered by events that are intelligently woven into the movie's narrative, such as in a scene in which she is being held captive by Skrulls and her mind is being probed for desired information, or another scene in which she listens to the black box recording of a plane crash that occurs years prior to the present day of the film. However, as said, these flashbacks are intelligently woven into the narrative, meaning that the contexts in which they are shown do not feel contrived. The purposes of said contexts aren't to spill the beans of Ms. Danvers' past, but are to further other plot points. However, in doing so, they incidentally reveal to Ms. Danvers that she is not who she has been led to believe she is, and that what she remembers about her past is a lie. It is via some of these flashbacks that the film tactfully and subtly deals with the aforementioned adversity that Ms. Danvers faces as a woman. For example, in one of them she performs a military fitness test to an entirely male audience of fellow military personnel who are shouting at her that she isn't good enough to pass it. What makes this particular flashback tactful and subtle, and how it deals with the sexism to which Ms. Danvers is being subjected, is its brevity and the lack of mention by the male onlookers that the reason that they believe that Ms. Danvers can't pass the test is that she is a woman. Hence, the flashback conveys a message but doesn't beat the audience over the head with it. In another flashback, Ms. Danvers is at a bar and is rhetorically asked by a male aircraft pilot, "You know why they call it a cockpit, right?" The insinuation of his question is clear but isn't explicit, and like the previously described flashback, this one is brief and therefore doesn't feel as if it's rubbing its message in the face of the audience. The film also deals with the issue of sexism via a fictional plot detail that is consistent with the actual history of the Air Force's policies pertaining to women. It is revealed by Maria Rambeau, who is Danvers' best friend and who is portrayed by Lashana Lynch, that when they were both in the Air Force, women were not allowed to fly aircraft in combat, and subsequently, their only opportunities to fly aircraft were during test flights. Hence, Ms. Rambeau and Ms. Danvers flew aircraft only when testing an experimental aircraft designed by a female engineer and scientist. This revelation shouldn't offend anyone because it is, as already stated, perfectly consistent with the historical fact that women were prohibited from flying aircraft in combat. If anyone is offended by this plot detail, then they are, quite frankly, sexist. Even the moment in the movie that is the closest to being overtly feminist is rather tame. It occurs at the end of the film's climactic battle sequence, after Ms. Danvers unlocks the full potential of her power and then easily destroys a myriad of missiles and part of the small fleet of spacecraft from which they are launched, which are led by the Kree warlord Ronan the Accuser. While Ms. Danvers threateningly collides one of her hands in the form of a fist into the palm of her other hand, creating a spectacular light show in the process, and engages in a staring contest with Ronan via a window of the spacecraft in which the warlord is standing, Ronan orders his assistant to command all of their remaining spacecraft to flee and tells him, "We'll be back for the weapon," in response to which the assistant asks, "The energy core?" Ronan answers by saying, "No, the woman." From the perspective of the audience, it's obvious that the intent of the dialogue exchange is to emphasize that Ms. Danvers, who has just demonstrated that she is very, very powerful, is a woman. However, within the context of the exchange itself, the purpose of Ronan's answer to his assistant is simply to clarify that he's not referring to what his assistant calls the energy core. Hence, the message is tactful and subtle, and therefore shouldn't come across in a preachy manner, but rather in an amusing manner. Other aspects of the movie that are amusing are pretty much every other one, including Miss Danvers herself, thanks to Brie Larson's bubbly portrayal of her. Contrary to the stoic expression that the captain wears in the first 2 trailers for the movie, which generated a lot of negative criticism, Miss Danvers is actually quite lively in the film. Every reply that she makes to another character is humorous and is delivered with quirkiness and a cheeky smile. For example, after Nick Fury breaks her and himself out of a detainment room by intelligently using a piece of Scotch tape to lift the fingerprint of a government agent off his wallet and apply it to a biometric scanner, he attempts to use that same piece of Scotch tape to bypass the lock of another room. However, before he can do so, Miss Danvers simply uses her fist-generated photon blast to blow a hole through the door, which prompts Fury to ask her why she simply didn't use that ability when they were detained, to which she responds, "I didn't want to steal your thunder," all while wearing a cheeky smile. The 3 other standout performances in the movie are those provided by Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, Ben Mendelsohn as Talos, and Jude Law as Yon-Rogg. Jackson is charming as a younger version of the founder of the Avengers, whom he has portrayed in previous entries in the MCU. In Captain Marvel, he's trusting of other people, rather than jaded and cynical as he has been in preceding films, and therefore is very sociable and engages in friendly banter with others. However, the film ends in a way that makes his transition into the jaded and cynical older version of himself, whom we've come to know, understandable. The way in which he becomes permanently blind in his left eye lives up to what he says in Captain America the Winter Soldier.
Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye.
However, it's peculiar, because even though it's as a result of misplacing his trust in someone, that someone can't be condemned because they injured his eye due to instinct rather than malice. As for Mendelsohn, he is compelling and amusing as Talos, the leader of the faction of Skrulls who are secretly carrying out a mission on Earth. He delivers his lines in a suave manner, and occasionally makes funny remarks that are either sarcastic or rhetorical, such as when he refers to his subordinate scientist as his science guy, or when he says, "Why would I turn into a filing cabinet?" in response to Fury's joking request that he actually turned into one. Jude Law is also compelling, as Yon-Rogg, Miss Danvers' mentor, and the leader of the Star Force, of which Miss Danvers is a member. Law conveys a convincing level of conviction. When Rogg instructs Miss Danvers to control her emotions and to think before she takes action, he says so earnestly, as well as when he challenges her to combat him without using her powers. Speaking of combat, all of the action in Captain Marvel is quite good. Everything from the small sequences, such as that in which Miss Danvers chases a Skrull onto a tram as Fury in turn pursues her, to the large sequences, such as that in which Miss Danvers goes into her full power mode and destroys dozens of missiles and several spaceships, is fantastic. Captain Marvel is a small mystery unraveling story that mainly takes place on and in the outer orbits of Earth, and via which Miss Danvers incidentally makes the personal journey of self-discovery. However, its settings include 2 other worlds and another galaxy. So the movie is an odd mixture of the MCU's typical terrestrial fare and its more expansive cosmic tales, placing it in terms of its scale between the first phase of solo flicks in the MCU and 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. As for its quality, Captain Marvel is an overall fantastic entry to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and apart from Black Panther, is better than the more recent solo entries to the franchise, such as Ant-Man and the Wasp, Spider-Man Homecoming, and Doctor Strange. In terms of its overall rank in the MCU, it's the 6th best.